Max Effort Monday. Whether you're in the car or at the office, it's time to give it your max effort, just like Bo and Blake.
So, hey, don't let your family down like you did on vacation, right?
Come on, get off your ass. And give it a max effort.
I'm ready to take this all away.
All right, so Mississippi State took the series from Alabama. I still think they're a long way off. We are the Out of Bounds Show, brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your car and home and save with your Farm Bureau Insurance agent. We also want to thank you for going to Apple Podcast, searching Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds, also Spotify, and hitting up the segments, interviews, and all the crazy stuff we do on the show. This is 105.9 The Zone ESPN, and Steve Robertson, 247 Sports, Gene's page, joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Steve, Lamonis and the squad needed a series win, and they got one. But I still think there's so many question marks on the mound. Obviously, the Gartman Dome thing looked good considering who they are. But Friday and Saturday was shaky. Sorry, Thursday and Friday was shaky. What do you think's going to happen? I mean, Cade Smith's going to go back out and Gartman's going to go back out. Do you think that Lamonis and Foxhall look at something else other than Gerangelo on the weekend?
Well, I think you probably need to. I mean, obviously Gerangelo has a ton of talent, and but he has had some early inning trouble, and that's been consistent throughout all his SEC starts. And he's going to be a stud. I mean, he really is. But you might be asking a little bit too much for him right now. I don't know. Maybe if you don't flip the order a little bit and maybe give Lofton the opportunity, depending on the matchups, especially when you've got a left-handed dominated lineup. But they got to figure some things out. And you're right. I mean, getting Cade Smith back gives you the ability to move Nate back to the bullpen. And, we talked about this about a month ago. He needed to go to the weekend as a starter just because you simply had to get a quality start out of somebody. You did. But now that Cade is back, perhaps Nate is better served being that guy that you can kind of pick and choose when you use him. And that was the thing about how big Thursday was, is you're able to get some separation in the game, win the ball game without having to throw dome, which really set things up well for Sunday or for Saturday. But the reality of it is when Alabama got separation in that ball game on Friday, State did not throw any of their veteran arms in that ball game, which allowed them to have the better bullpen options on Saturday, and that was really the difference in the ball game. Is Alabama, their relievers gave up 5 runs in the game, State gives up none, and that's. That's an outlier. Let's be honest about that. I mean, State has not been good out of the pen, but perhaps with Dome moving back out there, maybe you can find some consistency.
Ooh, okay. So everybody knows what this weekend is with the Rebs and the Dogs and Super Bulldog weekend. I'd love to know a stat on how many, and I could be off on this, but I feel like they've lost a ton of Saturday games for Super Bulldog weekend. Over the years. But anyway, so you like Cade and Gartman are going to stay on as starters. Dome is now back in the pen for Lamonis. You like, outside of Lofton, who else would you consider to start this weekend?
Well, I would hate to take Colby Holcomb off of the first guy of the bullpen role. I think in the last 2 weeks he's been exceptionally good and had a little bit of adversity with Alabama in the one inning when you go out there and you walk the ballpark. But he bounced back and at one time struck out 5 in a row. And I think he's a guy that's capable, but I think he's much too valuable where he is. I mean, Sierra is also a possibility, but you're basically asking another freshman to go out there and pitch in an SEC ball game. And Bo, here's the thing too. I know that State's 3-9 and Ole Miss is 2-10. That series is always wrapped up in intensity, and this year it might even be more. It's because of the fact that I think both teams are so desperate, for wins and to try to find some way to salvage something on the season. I expect an extremely competitive series where both teams play exceptionally hard because there's still a lot to play for.
Yeah, Ole Miss is having trouble in their bullpen. I watched a lot of their baseball over the weekend. They're close though. Here's the one thing that's interesting there's probably not a penny's worth of difference in the two teams. Might give the slight edge to Ole Miss, but they're not getting blown out. Steve, when they lose. Mississippi State is still susceptible to getting run ruled damn near every week. What do you make of that?
No, I think that's fair, and I think a lot of that too. You mentioned, Ole Miss is 2-10, but by and large the games have been competitive. I mean, it's like they get walked off against A&M in the ninth, and very competitive games with Arkansas over the weekend. I mean, the reality of it is that I think it's Ole Miss team. You mentioned being close. It's going to boil down to bullpen pitching in many respects, and Ole Miss has got some sticks too. I mean, I know they're struggling to find some consistency, but the record I don't think is indicative of the talent on that team. And I think anybody that thinks the state's just going to show up and this is just going to be another winning series, it's probably living a little bit of life of delusion here. I think it's going to be very competitive. And, I probably have more respect for Mike Bianco than a lot of people do. But I tell you, he built that program. He is Ole Miss baseball tradition, and he still calls all the pitches. And he's a guy that obviously knows how to recruit and develop catchers. I mean, the Rebels, the whole time he's been there, have been very, very good behind the plate. And when you've got a young pitching staff that's struggling a little bit, you need a guy back there. And they certainly have that with Calvin Harris. And so I think Ole Miss, as you mentioned, a loss is a loss. But when State loses, it's like you have this collective freak out. It's like the baseball psyche is so fragile. And it's like all of a sudden, things begin to steamroll against you, and you don't have that Tanner Allen guy to come up and say, okay, this is enough.
Well, it doesn't matter, though. A Tanner Allen can't overcome, and I'm not picking on these two players because they are talented, like you referenced, Steve, and they shouldn't have to throw in the spots that they are, but because Lamonis Gotro and Foxhall missed on two classes, this is where they are. You can't walk 9 people on that Friday game. It doesn't matter if Babe Ruth comes out of the damn stands. You can't walk the whole lineup. So that's where Ole Miss is not even close to where Mississippi State is as far as walking and hit batters. Now, I'll say this. They surprised me. McCants, Gonzalez, and Calvin Harris. I couldn't believe Calvin Harris had those 2 pass balls in big moments against Arkansas. Because you're right, they have been amazing behind the plate. Because we all know Bianco played at LSU under Bertman and with McDonald and all that. So they were a little. I've seen enough sloppy from Mississippi State this year, and I can't figure out what's going on with Forsyth. But I was surprised at some of their miscues. What do you chalk some of that up to, Steve? It's weird because these programs haven't done that the last, under Bianco for a while, but really since Cohen took over in 9-10 and got it rolling. What do you chalk that up to? Some of the routine plays not making them, Steve?
Well, it's about pressing, and that's the thing. I mean, it all starts and doesn't end with pitching, but it starts with pitching. I mean, it's like you begin to think you have to be perfect defensively in order to win ball games.
That's true.
Think you have to go out and score a ton of runs to win ball games. So guys start pressing at the plate. When you have no confidence in your pitching, you don't have a team. And what happens too, and you mentioned the Ole Miss thing, and you've kind of seen it happen this year. It's like all of a sudden it's a close ball game. It's a 1-run ball game one way or another. And then you've got to pull a starter and hand that ball over to the guy in the bullpen. And when that team doesn't believe in that guy, they're going to lose that ball game. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you start thinking, oh, here we go again. Every time we have to get it up, give a reliever an opportunity late, we ended up coughing up the lead. And so it's only human nature to start thinking, hey, this is where we are. This is who we are.
I agree.
And as I mentioned, that Allen thing, it's a leadership thing. It's not necessarily one individual performance, but it's a culture thing. And I think that's kind of what's happened at State. I think the culture has slipped a little bit. It's because of the fact that, you've got some guys up there that are veterans, but they're kind of quiet leaders. They're kind of lead by example guys. You don't have the rah-rah guy that can say, hey, get on my back, we're fixing to go win this ball game. I think that's really what State's missing right now. But, you mentioned the Lane Forsythe thing. You had a pretty good stretch there for a while, but, he made some errors this weekend that you don't see in Little League. I mean, like the Ross Highfield has an amazing pop. The runner's going to be out by 5 or 6 feet. We don't catch the baseball. First ground ball of the game on Saturday, routine ground ball to short. It goes right through the wickets. And then Gartman's already got it, basically on the clock because he can get you through the order twice. But now you're basically making him having to labor that much more. And he had to get, 5, 6 outs in the first inning. And Alabama ties the game without ever hitting the ball out of the infield and doesn't even get the benefit of a hit. 2 walks, 2 errors lead to 2 runs. those are the kinds of things that get you beat.
I think Ross Highfield is the next guy. It's just early. He will be next year. As far as that guy in the clubhouse, it's going to be his clubhouse. So talk about Highfield and Dakota Jordan really coming around as true freshmen and look, they're still going to have some tough games, but you can just tell what they have and what they can be at the plate. And talk about that play that Jordan made on the fence too, Steve.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're the next duo. You know, you look back at Rooker and Mangum and then TA and Rowdy. I think these guys, number one, because of their obvious talent, but they're also very vocal. And you know, Ross is a guy that struggled at times defensively, and you and I have talked about this a million times. Until you've had to block up an SEC breaking ball, you don't know what you have, right? I mean, you don't see it in high school, no matter how elite the pitching is. Until there's been a runner at third and a game on the line, and you got to block up a breaking ball that's buried in the dirt and keep the game where it is, you don't know what you have. And he's getting better. And he mentioned last week that they've changed a couple things technique-wise, and he's a lot more comfortable back there. And the home run that he hit against Alabama had a very clutch moment there. I mean, he hit that ball 50 feet over the center field wall. And, I mean, it's 390 to center. He hit it 448 feet. So, you know, I guess it's longer than that, actually. You can do the math on that. But the reality of it is, yeah, youth is being served, and I think Dakota's getting a lot more comfortable. And I think what you're seeing, too, is you're seeing why this staff wanted to play these guys as true freshmen now, because you're beginning to see what they demonstrated in fall baseball. And Dakota Jordan to play at the fence there, that happens as the last out in the third inning. And the way that this, as fragile as the Bulldog psyche has been, if that thing goes off the wall, at least one run scores, and who knows if it doesn't open the floodgates, and we start thinking, well, here we go again. However, a guy makes an incredibly athletic play. It ignited the dugout. You know, absolutely ignited the dugout. And you see him coming back. And the thing about it is Dakota Jordan expects to make those plays. He didn't just think, hey, well, this is the greatest play of my life. I'm going to make that play all the time, you know. Yeah. And I think that's what you're seeing now. And all of a sudden they're beginning to get it going at the plate, which adds some length to the lineup.
And Highfield blocked up some balls. I mean, like you said, he's making strides every day because he was thrown into this. He probably should just be playing 20 games at catcher, right? 15 to 20 at catcher and doing a little DHing if they'd have signed a JUCO kid or whatever. But you were there all weekend. Couldn't you tell, Steve, that he's blocking up some balls that he wasn't just 2 weeks ago?
Well, and it's really been in the last 2 weeks. I mean, you saw against South Carolina, you know, him beginning to do some of the things he wasn't doing early in the year, even against Lipscomb. You know, he was a guy that, you know, at times that, you know, we go back to that Kentucky game. I don't fault Ross for that. I mean, that's a slider that Nate Dohm just didn't execute. He throws in another batter's box, and as hard as he throws, and, you know, it's a dangerous combination. So everybody's getting better. But I think the bigger thing, Bo, with all of this is it gives your pitchers confidence. When they know that they can go up there and miss a little bit, or if necessary, bury a breaking ball in the dirt. They got a guy back there that can block things up, so they don't have to hold anything back. They can pitch with full intensity. And I don't think there's any coincidence that you've seen the pitching from some guys get better as Ross Highfield has matured and begin to develop behind the plate. I think that is something that probably the casual fan doesn't fully appreciate. Is when you don't trust your catcher, you can't go all out as a pitcher.
Right. It's his team next year. Hell, it may be his team by May 1st. We'll see. What do they need to do? What's realistic down the stretch? I know we like to get ahead of ourselves. Obviously, they've got two opportunities to win series the next 2 weeks. And then it gets real, Steve. So, I mean, I know it's the rivalry week and all that, and Dogs Rebs want to get after each other and so on, but just how critical is this weekend and next, considering they could lose both, but they are winnable series, considering the way Auburn and Ole Miss are playing, Steve?
Yeah, you have to win these series. I mean, and we said this last week prior to the Alabama series. If they're going to make a move, it has to start now. Well, now it started. Can you keep it going? This is an Ole Miss team that's going to be desperate. They're going to throw everything they got at you. They're not going to quit. Absolutely not going to quit. So you're going to have to beat them. And then you start thinking about, what's next. You go to Auburn. Auburn, of course, tough weekend against A&M. Auburn is really challenged offensively, and so if they can go out there and throw strikes, you feel pretty good about the opportunity to win that series. Then you get ready to go to Tennessee, and that series beginning of the year we looked at and said, it's going to be a disaster. Tennessee is 5-7 right now. They have South Carolina and Vanderbilt coming up, I believe it's correct, and so they could be at worst a 10-loss team by the time State gets there. And so now you start thinking, hey, maybe you can go up there and get a game because their starting pitching has not been as advertised, with the exception of maybe Dollander.
Right.
Bullpen is really good. And so if you're State, you can go up there and piece some things together. Maybe you can get a ball game. I don't think State's going to go up there and win that series. Despite the record, Tennessee is a very talented team, and they're going to be looking to get fat, trying to get back into the regional hosting discussion. And I think right now, if you had to call it, Tennessee is probably not hosting. But you get to these next 2 weekends, and that Vanderbilt series is absolutely huge, and you still got Kentucky and South Carolina to go. It could be an interesting year for Tony Vitello after a lot of people thought, hey, this is the new LSU. And then you get upset in Super Regional, and now, what are you, fourth in the SEC East and 2 games out of last place? I mean, they're going to get it together. You just hope if you're Mississippi State, they do it after, maybe the Monday after you leave town.
Yeah, Tennessee and A&M both in 5-7 within striking distance, but we'll see. Steve Robertson, the Boneyard Podcast, genespage.com, 247 Sports. Steve joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Steve, Cade Smith threw 42 pitches. What do you think's realistic Friday against Ole Miss as they're revving him back up?
Yeah, I think maybe the best you could hope for is 5 innings. I don't think you push him to 100 pitches unless he's just feeling it. But, I thought he was good. I didn't think he was great. And I think, again, you got to make some plays behind him. But, in order for State to have any chance at any postseason at all, they got to have Cade Smith be good. And at times he can be great. But, the best ability is availability, right? He hadn't been available for much of the season. And so, getting him back is almost like adding a free agent in many respects, and it gives you, again, the flexibility to move Nate around where you need him. They got to go out there and get a win on Friday. And I think, Cade versus Jack Doherty, who's had some real struggles this year. I think State's got to be able to get that win on Friday. I think probably whoever wins the Friday game is going to win this series.
I agree. I agree. Jacob Gonzalez took a pitch off his shoelaces and hit it to Tupelo. Steve. It's crazy that he's the leadoff considering everything that he can do.
Well, I think maybe it's just about getting him as many at bats as you can.
Yeah.
And this is an offense at times that has kind of gone into hibernation. And I think, he is a stud. And anybody that thinks that guy's a first round draft is just not being fair. That kid is an extremely talented guy. And I know he's had some challenges at times defensively, but the makeup of that guy is really good. And listen, they're going to go as far as he can take them as best he can. He's got to get some help on the pitching staff, but it's going to be job one for State. I mean, you look back last year in that game 3, State had that game 1, and then Gonzalez goes out there and rips that 2-run shot off Pico Collins in the 4th extra inning. I mean, and that's what big time players do. It's like you have to have some clutch in you, and he does. And I know almost people get frustrated at times with some of the errors, but I think this is a guy that history is going to be very kind to. You look back, not just the fact that he was on a national championship team, but he's going to play baseball for a long time.
Yeah. Okay, what else am I missing? Any other pitcher that I know you just went through a bunch, and there just may not be anything left. They're relying on a bunch of young dudes. And does Holcomb have – does this guy – it seems like he's got some pretty damn good stuff. Like maybe he's close to turning the corner, Steve?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think
maybe
mainly the confidence piece. The confidence piece is what it boils down to. And he and I talked about that this past weekend. Is that, there's some pitches maybe he was scared to let loose here, a month ago, against SEC hitters. And now he's realized, hey, if I go in here and pound the zone and follow the game plan, I can get SEC hitters out. And he had a really good outing against South Carolina, a little bit shaky at times against Alabama, but he turned it around. One of the better turnarounds I've seen of a relief pitcher in a uniform in a couple of years at State. But they need him to continue to be that guy. And maybe you pair him up with Cade, and maybe you pair Nate up with Gart, and then you got to figure out what you're going to do on day 3. I don't know. Maybe if you don't push, the freshman back to game 3, just because of the fact that they'll be against the third best pitcher, and so maybe that makes it a more competitive game. But, it's been such a roller coaster with the starting rotation. It's not even the same group that you had at the beginning of the year. And the fact that you're this late in the season still trying to figure that out and get things settled. I mean, it's not promising, but I think with Nate being the guy that he is, maybe he can give you a couple innings on Friday, maybe come back on Sunday and help you get a dub. But the reality of it is it can't just be Nate Dom. Somebody else is going to have to step up, whether it be Bradley Lofton or Gerangelo Sanjay or Evan Sierra or Brock Tapper. Somebody else has got to step up on this young freshman group and eat up some valuable innings in order for State to win this series and really make something out of the season.
Are you about to? Somebody just asked. Are you about to break a football commitment?
Well, we got a couple things that we're waiting on. So, and one of the things that we tried to do in recent years, since kids have become so active on social media, is to let kids take ownership of their announcements.
Sure.
For years and years when it was so competitive, and we had to go to press conferences and things like that. It was always fun if you already had the story and your competition went to the press conference, and as the kid announced, you already had your story up, and those guys made a long drive for nothing. So there was a little gamesmanship and all that, but kind of our philosophy is we want to tease it, we want to predict it, but at the end of the day, we don't want to scoop a kid. We want to give them the opportunity to kind of take ownership of their moment, because it is their moment.
Okay. All right. Somebody just asked us on our agup.com text line, because evidently Arnett posted something and they said, is Steve about to drop a commitment? And so anyway, but Blake,
yeah, I have a question.
I'm trying to put all this together and interview Steve. Good. So I've got people talking to me via our text line.
Well, we saw the Arnett GIF.
Yeah.
We saw the Arnett GIF tweet, which is not how he normally has behaved, but now he's the head coach.
Got it.
My question to Steve is much more important and journalistic in nature. Now that Mike Leach, the Pirate, is no longer the head man, do you have a new GIF choice for when you do announce commitments? Because it used to be the Pirate flag.
What is that going to be for Arnett, Steve?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've actually thought about that, because a while back I was going to tweet out the Jolly Roger, and I was like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right.
No,
you know what I mean? We're not great anymore, so I don't know. I'll figure something out. We'll probably do some '80s metal or something. I joke with those guys too. It's like Kevin Barbet is bald, Brad Peterson is bald, Zach Arnett is bald. And so I made the comment recently. I said, listen, Zach, you can't keep hiring and promoting in your own image. We got to
yes, he
what
can.
You guys are doing here. So we're
throw me in the mix.
Yeah, I got enough hair for all of us. But the reality of it is that I got to keep hair metal alive as long as I can. And so matter of fact, when I die, Bo, I'm sure that you'll outlive me. Make sure they play Home Sweet Home from Motley Crue on my way out. So.
Got it. Okay, so a football commitment could be coming on genespage.com, and we'll see. I don't know what Arnett's Jeff deal meant, but and Steve's going to figure one out now that Zach Arnett is the head football coach at MSU. Steve, appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
See you soon.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. Who knows? Steve knows. We'll just see who it is in the next, few minutes or whatever. We are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. We're brought to you by RPT and Rick's Pro Truck. Blake got his set of tires for his Jeep Grand Cherokee from RPT in Gluckstadt, and I got my tires and lift on my Jeep from Rick's Pro Truck. So when you grab that truck, SUV, or Jeep, Rick's Pro Truck, you got 3 locations now, Gluckstadt, Flowood, and Pearl. RicksProTruck.com. Hour number 3 coming up on the Out of Bounds Show.